The hollow ones. The tunnel was alive. Private Danny Whitaker knew that even before he slid down into the throat of the earth. The air slithered against his skin, thick and stagnant, reeking of damp soil, sweat, and something worse. Something rotting. He had crawled through tunnels before, but this one felt different. It breathed. He tightened his grip on his .45 and inched forward. The clay walls pressed against his shoulders. His helmet scraped the ceiling, so he took it off, leaving his sweat-matted hair exposed. The only light came from his flashlight, a dim, flickering beam that barely pushed back the darkness. Behind him, Lieutenant Carver whispered down, "Keep moving, rat. Recon only. Don't go picking fights if you don't have to." Danny didn't reply. He just pushed forward. The tunnel stretched endlessly. It bent and twisted, a living intestine choking off his breath. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. The deeper he went, the stronger that smell became. It wasn't just death. It was old, ancient, and wrong. Then he heard it. A whisper. Danny froze. The whisper slithered up from the dark ahead, hushed and wet, like someone gurgling words through a mouthful of blood. Rat. His breath hitched. He swept his flashlight forward, but the beam just bounced off the curving walls. Nothing ahead. His pulse hammered. Maybe it was the enemy. Maybe it was a trick. But he knew, deep down, that the Viet Cong didn't whisper like that. Danny swallowed hard and crawled forward. Every nerve screamed for him to turn back, to scramble out of this God-forsaken place and into the open air. But he couldn't. Not yet. His fingers brushed something soft. He yanked his hand back, shoving the flashlight down. A face stared up at him. A soldier. American. His eyes were wide, bloodshot and bulging. His mouth hung open, his lips stretched in a silent scream. His skin was the color of wet ash, and something had torn his throat out. But that wasn't the worst part. Something had moved beneath his skin. Danny stifled a scream. His hand trembled as he reached out, barely touching the dead man's cheek. The flesh squirmed. He jerked back, bile rising in his throat. The whisper came again. "Rat!" Closer. Danny spun his flashlight up, and something was there. A face, not quite human. Its skin was stretched too tight, the eyes sunken deep into the sockets, nothing but black pits. Its lips curled, revealing too many teeth, jagged and yellow, wet with something thick. Danny fired. The shot blasted through the tunnel, deafening him, but the thing did not move. Then, faster than he could process, it opened its mouth. Not in a scream, in a yawn. A horrible, unhinging motion, its jaw stretching too wide, the skin cracking at the corners, splitting open like a rotting fruit. Danny scrambled back. His boots slipped in something slick. He landed hard on his back, knocking the air from his lungs. The thing crawled forward. Danny tried to raise his pistol, but the tunnel was too tight. He was trapped. The thing moved faster, its limbs jerking unnaturally, pulling itself closer, its gaping mouth trembling as if whispering 1,000 voices at once. "Join us! Join us in the hollow!" Danny screamed. He fired again and again, but the bullets passed through it like smoke. Then he felt it. Hands, cold and thin, reaching up from the ground. He looked down. The tunnel floor was alive. Fingers pushed through the dirt, grasping, pulling. Faces surfaced, twisted and rotten, their lips curling in silent wails. They clawed at his arms, at his legs, dragging him down, down into the pulsing earth. Danny thrashed. He kicked and fought, but the hands were everywhere. The last thing he saw was that face, too tight, too wide, hovering over him, its mouth still open, its breath inside his skull. The whisper filled him. Then the tunnel swallowed him whole. When the platoon found Danny's body the next day, he was lying in the tunnel, eyes wide, mouth stretched into a horrible grin. His gun was full of bullets. His radio was off. and his lips were moving, whispering. Rot!